November 17, 1944, 2:23 a.m. The Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Technical Sergeant James Robert Hendricks pressed his cheek against the wooden stock of his rifle, feeling the familiar grain of Tennessee black walnut he'd carved himself 3 years earlier in his father's barn. Through the darkness, 14 German soldiers were preparing to attack his company's position, completely unaware they were being watched through a scope assembled from tractor parts and mail-order lenses. The rifle in Hendricks' hands looked nothing like the standard-issue M1903 Springfield. The stock was hand-carved from a single piece of walnut he'd selected and cured himself. The barrel had been rebored and hand-lapped using techniques his grandfather taught him for precision squirrel rifles. The scope mount was fabricated from steel stock using his father's farm lathe. The trigger had been modified to break at exactly 2 pounds with no creep. When Hendricks had arrived at basic training in 1942 carrying this rifle instead of accepting a standard-issue weapon, his drill instructor had laughed so hard he'd nearly collapsed. "Son, this ain't the Revolutionary War. We use modern weapons now. Take that museum piece back to the farm." But Hendricks had refused. He'd spent 2 years building this rifle, testing it against every factory rifle he could find. At 300 yards, his farm-built rifle could put 5 shots into a circle the size of a quarter. At 500 yards, a silver dollar. At 700 yards, a dinner plate. No factory rifle could match it. The Army's response was predictable. Regulations stated all infantry weapons must meet specific standards. Custom rifles violated standardization requirements. The commanding officer ordered the rifle confiscated and destroyed. Private Hendricks would use standard-issue equipment like everyone else. What the Army didn't know was that James Hendricks came from 5 generations of Kentucky riflemen. His great-great-grandfather had carried a long rifle at the Battle of New Orleans. His grandfather had won the Tennessee State Championship 7 years running. His father had taught him that a rifle wasn't just a tool, it was an extension of the shooter's will. Hendricks took his case to the Inspector General. He submitted written testimony from competitive shooting championships he'd won. He provided photographic evidence of target groups shot at various ranges. Most remarkably, he requested formal testing of his rifle against any standard military rifle the Army chose to provide. The test was conducted at Camp Perry in October 1942. 5 shooters of equal skill would fire Hendricks's rifle and 5 standard M1903 Springfields at targets from 100 to 800 yards. The custom rifle outperformed the factory weapons in every category. Accuracy was 37% better. Consistency was 42% better. Captain Robert Mitchell, supervising the test, wrote in his report, "Private Hendricks has demonstrated exceptional craftsmanship and understanding of rifle mechanics. His custom weapon exceeds military standards in all measurable categories. However, allowing private weapons would create logistical complications. Recommendation: rifle should be confiscated, but Hendricks should be assigned to specialized marksmanship training." Hendricks appealed again. This time his letter reached Colonel William Brophy, himself a competitive shooter before the war. Brophy saw an opportunity. The Army was developing sniper programs based on successful German and Soviet models. Perhaps Hendricks and his remarkable rifle could serve a specialized purpose. In January 1943, Private First Class James Hendricks was assigned to the newly formed Scout Sniper School at Camp Ritchie, Maryland. He could keep his custom rifle, but he would be tested relentlessly. If the rifle failed or proved inferior, it would be immediately confiscated. The training was brutal. 8 weeks learning fieldcraft, camouflage, range estimation, wind reading, and advanced marksmanship. But the mockery never stopped. Other trainees called his rifle the Tennessee Special or the farm gun. Instructors made jokes about hillbillies bringing squirrel rifles to war. During equipment inspections, officers would ask if he'd also brought his hunting dog and moonshine jug. Hendricks endured it silently. His rifle spoke for itself. At every qualification, he scored perfect or near perfect. In field exercises, Hendricks consistently outperformed shooters using the latest military equipment. His first shot hit. Probability at ranges beyond 500 yards exceeded 90%, while most trained snipers achieved 60 to 70%. The reason was simple. Hendricks hadn't just built a rifle, he had built his rifle. He knew every dimension, every tolerance, every characteristic, because he had personally measured, cut, fitted, and adjusted every component. He understood his rifle's ballistics with an intimacy that factory rifle users could never achieve. In June 1943, Hendricks shipped to England with the 28th Infantry Division. His rifle went with him, carefully packed in a custom case he'd built from his mother's cedar chest. The 28th Infantry Division landed at Normandy on July 22, 1944. Hendricks was assigned to Company B, 1st Battalion, 110th Infantry Regiment. His role was simple: eliminate high-value targets that slowed company advances, German machine gun crews, officers directing defenses, artillery observers calling in fire. His first combat engagement came on July 26th near St. Lo. A German machine gun positioned in a church steeple was holding up an entire battalion. 3 American snipers had tried to eliminate the gunner. All 3 failed. The range was estimated at 670 yards. Hendricks studied the situation for 20 minutes through his scope. He noted wind direction, estimated temperature, calculated that the German gunner would have to lean slightly forward to track targets below. The shot required patience. Hendricks waited 37 minutes until conditions were perfect. His crosshairs settled on a point 3 inches right of where he saw the German's helmet. He pressed the trigger. Through his scope, Hendricks saw the German gunner jerk backward and disappear. The machine gun fell silent. American infantry advanced. 3 companies that had been pinned down for 6 hours resumed their attack. That evening, his company commander, Captain Thomas Bradley, called him to headquarters. "Sergeant, I received 3 reports that you made an impossible shot this afternoon, 670 yards through a church window. The observer said you fired once, hit once, and that German never moved again." The captain paused, then smiled. "I also received a complaint from battalion that you're using non-standard equipment. Some rear echelon officer saw your rifle and said, 'It looks like you built it in a garage.' He wants it confiscated and replaced with proper military equipment." I told him that any sergeant who can make impossible shots with a garage-built rifle is worth more than 10 men with perfect military equipment. Keep your rifle, Hendricks. Over the next 3 months, Hendricks's reputation grew. He eliminated 47 confirmed targets during the advance through France. German officers stopped standing in groups. Artillery observers worked from covered positions. The enemy was learning that the Americans had a sniper who never missed. But the mockery continued among American troops who hadn't seen Hendricks work. Soldiers from other companies saw his custom rifle and assumed he was some backwards hick. New replacements would ask if he'd made his rifle out of spare tank parts. Officers from rear echelon units suggested he should turn in his antique. Hendricks ignored them all. The men who actually fought beside him knew the truth. When German snipers had your company pinned, when officers needed an impossible shot made immediately, they called for Sergeant Hendricks and his farm gun. By November, the 28th Infantry Division was committed to the Hurtgen Forest, a dark expanse of dense evergreen woods along the German-Belgian border. The forest became a nightmare. Artillery shells burst in the treetops, creating deadly wooden splinters. The thick canopy prevented air support. Visibility rarely exceeded 50 yards. German defenders used the forest masterfully. They prepared defensive positions in depth with interconnected bunkers and fighting positions. They positioned machine guns to create interlocking fields of fire. The forest amplified the defenders' advantages and nullified American superiority in vehicles and firepower. Company B had taken 60% casualties since entering the Hurtgen. Replacement soldiers arrived weekly, young men, fresh from training, who looked terrified the moment they saw the dark trees. Few survived their first week. Hendricks adapted his tactics to the forest. Long-range shooting was impossible in the dense woods, so he focused on eliminating nearby threats. He would crawl to within 150 yards, far closer than snipers normally operated, and eliminate crews before they knew they were being hunted. November 16th brought orders for a night attack. German forces had established a strong position on a ridge designated Hill 257. This hill dominated the surrounding forest, allowing German observers to call artillery on any American movement. The hill had to be taken. Captain Bradley called Hendricks to his command post. Sergeant, intelligence reports German snipers on that hill, at least 3, maybe more. They've been picking off our officers and radiomen all week. I need you forward during the attack. If you can eliminate those snipers before they realize we're attacking, it might save 20 lives. Hendricks studied the map. The approach would be through 600 yards of dense forest, with no cover except trees and darkness. I'll need to go in early, before the artillery starts. If I can get close to their lines before they're alerted, I might be able to eliminate key positions before the main attack develops. How early? Give me 4 hours before the attack. Midnight insertion. That means you'll be alone out there for 3 hours before our guys attack. If something goes wrong, there's no backup. Hendricks checked his rifle. I've been alone before. At midnight exactly. Hendricks crossed the line of departure alone. The temperature was 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Light wind from the northwest. Partial moon providing minimal illumination through the forest canopy. Perfect conditions for stalking. He moved through the darkness like a ghost. Each step was carefully placed to avoid snapping branches or rustling leaves. Every 50 yards, he would stop for 5 minutes, listening and observing. German positions could be anywhere. After an hour of movement, he detected the first German position, a fighting hole approximately 30 yards away, occupied by 2 soldiers sharing a cigarette. The glowing ember moved between them, marking their location perfectly. Hendricks didn't shoot them. His mission was to eliminate high-value targets, not alert every German on the hill. He noted their position and moved around them, adding 50 yards to his route, but maintaining stealth. By 0200 hours, he had penetrated 400 yards into German-held territory. He'd bypassed 8 defensive positions without being detected. Now he needed to find the snipers Captain Bradley mentioned. Snipers chose positions offering good visibility and cover. Hendricks looked for the thickest trees, positions that would provide structural support for an elevated hide. After 20 minutes of searching, he found what he was looking for, a massive oak tree approximately 500 yards behind German front lines. Rough wooden boards had been nailed into the trunk, forming a crude ladder to the lower branches. From 30 feet up, a sniper would have excellent observation over approaching American forces. Hendricks positioned himself 80 yards from the tree, using a fallen log for support. Through his scope, he could barely make out the sniper's position. The darkness was extreme. His target was a shadow among shadows, but Hendricks's custom lenses, selected for maximum light transmission, revealed just enough detail. He aimed at the center of the shadowy mass and pressed his trigger. The rifle fired, its familiar recoil pattern exactly what Hendricks expected. Through his scope, he saw the shadow jerk and slump. The first German sniper was eliminated. 3 minutes later, he heard movement. Multiple soldiers moving carelessly, heading toward the tree where their sniper had been killed. Hendricks counted at least 6 men approaching the tree. As Hendricks watched through his scope, he identified one of the approaching Germans as an officer. The man carried himself differently, moved with authority. This was probably a company commander or platoon leader, a high-value target. The officer stood slightly apart, silhouetted against lighter background. Hendricks aimed carefully and pressed his trigger. The officer collapsed instantly. The Germans around him froze momentarily in confusion, then scattered toward cover. He spotted movement near a large tree stump. A German soldier was setting up a machine gun, preparing to sweep the area with fire. This machine gun crew posed a serious threat to the coming American attack. Hendricks shifted his aim to the machine gunner. When the German leaned forward to position the machine gun's tripod, Hendricks fired. The German fell across his weapon. His assistant gunner immediately dropped behind the tree stump for cover, but in doing so, he exposed himself to Hendricks's angle of fire. The 4th shot eliminated the assistant gunner. Now the Germans knew approximately where Hendricks was positioned. He heard commands being shouted in German. He had perhaps 2 minutes before he would be under concentrated fire. Hendricks spotted a German soldier crawling toward his position, attempting to flank him. The fifth shot caught the German soldier mid-crawl. Immediately, the German position erupted with fire. Machine guns opened up, rifles barked, the entire hillside lit up with muzzle flashes. But they were shooting at where they thought Hendricks was positioned, not where he actually was. Their estimate was off by 30 yards. Hendricks used the covering fire to relocate. While Germans shot at his former position, he low-crawled 50 yards to his right, taking up a new position behind a cluster of boulders. Through his scope, he identified a German sergeant attempting to organize a fire team to search for the American sniper. Hendricks's sixth shot eliminated him. This created chaos. The organized German defense was fragmenting into frightened men shooting at darkness. Hendricks spotted movement near the original sniper tree. Another German sniper was descending the wooden ladder. The seventh shot caught the German sniper as he reached the ground. By now, Hendricks had eliminated 7 German soldiers, but he was deep in enemy territory with alerted defenders around him. The smart decision would be to withdraw. But Hendricks saw an opportunity. The German defenders were panicking. If he could create enough chaos, the German defense might collapse before the American attack even began. He shifted position again, crawling another 40 yards to a depression providing cover. From here, he could observe the main German command position, a reinforced bunker, where officers were attempting to coordinate the defense. Through his scope, he saw 3 German officers gathered at the bunker entrance, apparently arguing. One officer was looking at a map using a shielded flashlight. Hendricks aimed at this officer, reasoning he was likely the company commander. His 8th shot took the officer in the chest. The other 2 officers dove into their bunker. Hendricks waited. 40 seconds later, one officer emerged cautiously. Hendricks's 9th shot eliminated him before he reached the fallen commander. If you're enjoying this deep dive into untold military history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We bring you incredible stories of courage, innovation, and triumph that deserve to be remembered. Now back to Hendricks's most legendary night. Hendricks checked his watch. 02:45. 15 minutes until American artillery would begin. He needed to eliminate as many key positions as possible. He identified a German machine gun nest that would have devastating fields of fire against approaching infantry. 3 soldiers occupied this position. Eliminating them would require multiple shots. Hendricks aimed at the gunner first, then fired. The 10th shot caught the gunner in the head. The loaders immediately scrambled to replace him. Hendricks' 11th shot eliminated the first loader. The 12th shot caught the second loader as he tried to drag his comrade away. 3 critical shots in perhaps 15 seconds. The machine gun nest was neutralized. By now the German position was in complete disarray. Soldiers were abandoning their fighting holes and retreating toward rear positions. Officers had lost control. The hill was rapidly emptying as panicked Germans fled an enemy they couldn't see. Hendricks spotted a German soldier attempting to man a previously abandoned machine gun position. Hendricks's 13th shot ended this soldier's courage. At 02:59, Hendricks identified his final target. A German sergeant was standing in an exposed position, attempting to rally retreating soldiers. This was exactly the kind of leadership that could restore German defensive cohesion. Hendricks aimed carefully. This shot was approximately 250 yards. The German sergeant was moving, gesturing wildly. Hendricks tracked the movement, calculated his lead, and pressed his trigger for the 14th time that night. The German sergeant collapsed. The soldiers he'd been trying to rally scattered into darkness. The German defense of Hill 257 was broken. At precisely 0300 hours, American artillery began falling on the hill. The bombardment lasted 10 minutes. At 0310, Company B and Company A began their assault. They advanced, expecting fierce resistance. Instead, they found abandoned positions, dead Germans, and no organized opposition. The few German soldiers who remained surrendered immediately. By 0430, Hill 257 was in American hands. Total American casualties, 2 wounded. Expected casualties, at least 30. Company B's commander, Captain Bradley, found Hendricks at 0500 hours. The sergeant was sitting on a log, cleaning his rifle. 14 spent cartridge cases lay beside him, neatly arranged in a row. Bradley stared at the cartridge cases. How many? 14 confirmed. 2 snipers, 3 machine gun crews, 2 officers, 1 sergeant, 6 soldiers in defensive positions. You broke them before we attacked. Yes. Sir? The captain sat down beside Hendricks. This morning, some colonel from regiment was complaining about your non-standard rifle again. He wanted to file paperwork to have it confiscated. I told that colonel that your farm-built rifle just saved 30 American lives and took an objective that might have cost us 100 casualties. I told him that if he filed one piece of paperwork about your rifle, I would personally ensure that he led the next night attack himself. Did he file the paperwork? He decided regulations could be flexible in combat situations. As dawn broke over the Hurtgen Forest, word of Hendricks's achievement spread through the 28th Infantry Division. The sergeant who eliminated 14 German soldiers in one night with a rifle he'd built in his father's barn became legendary. But more significantly, German forces along the entire Hurtgen sector learned about the American sniper who could appear anywhere, eliminate targets with perfect accuracy, and disappear without being detected. German after-action reports from November 17th described the Hill 257 attack as psychological warfare conducted by specialized American marksmen. The effect on defensive morale cannot be understated. Multiple positions abandoned without contact with main American forces. The German 10th Wehrmacht reported to higher headquarters. American sniper tactics in the Hurtgen Forest have achieved results disproportionate to numbers involved. Individual marksmen operating ahead of main attacks are eliminating key defensive positions and creating panic among defenders. Hendricks continued operating throughout the Hurtgen campaign. By December, when the 28th Infantry Division was pulled from the line, he had accumulated 93 confirmed kills. His survival rate in one of the war's deadliest battles was attributed to his intimate knowledge of his custom rifle and his patient, methodical approach. In January 1945, Hendricks was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions on Hill 257. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy." Technical Sergeant James Robert Hendricks distinguished himself by exceptionally valorous actions during the night of November 16th to 17th, 1944. Operating alone deep in enemy-held territory, Sergeant Hendricks eliminated 14 enemy soldiers including snipers, machine gun crews, and officers, thereby breaking enemy defensive cohesion and preventing significant American casualties. His courage and skill reflect the highest credit upon himself and the military service. The medal ceremony was conducted by Major General Norman Cota. General Cota made a point of examining Hendricks's rifle during the ceremony. "Sergeant, how long did it take you to build this rifle?" 2 years, sir. Started in 1940, finished in 1942. And the Army wanted to confiscate it. "Multiple times, sir." General Cota handed the rifle back. "Sergeant, as long as I command this division, no one will take this rifle from you. It has earned its place in military history." Perhaps the most significant recognition came from German soldiers captured during subsequent operations. When interrogated, German prisoners consistently mentioned the American sniper who operated at night with perfect accuracy. They called him Der Waldgeist, the forest ghost. German soldiers in the Hurtgen sector feared this sniper more than artillery or airstrikes because he was invisible, unpredictable, and seemingly unstoppable. One captured German sergeant, when shown a photograph of Hendricks with his rifle, stared at the image for a long moment. "This man, this rifle. They killed my lieutenant and 3 of my best soldiers on one night in November. We thought we were being attacked by an entire American sniper platoon. You are telling me this was one man, with a rifle he built on a farm, This is not possible. The interrogator assured him it was documented fact. The German sergeant shook his head. Then, you Americans have won this war. If one farmer with a homemade rifle can destroy professional German soldiers, what chance do we have against your entire nation? This sentiment reflected a broader German realization. American ingenuity, individualism, and innovation created advantages that German rigid doctrine couldn't counter. The fact that one sergeant's custom-built rifle outperformed factory weapons symbolized American cultural strengths that transcended military technology. Technical analysis of Hendrix's rifle revealed why it performed so exceptionally. The hand-selected black walnut stock absorbed recoil better than standard stocks. The hand-lapped barrel achieved smoothness that factory barrels rarely matched. The custom trigger eliminated mechanical creep. The hand-assembled scope used lenses selected for optical clarity rather than manufacturing cost. But more significantly, the rifle was built specifically for Hendrix's physical dimensions. The length of pull, the height of the comb, the angle of the grip, all were customized for his body. When Hendrix shouldered his rifle, it aligned naturally. The rifle became an extension of his body rather than a separate tool. Modern precision rifle competitions have validated Hendrix's approach. Today's competitive shooters routinely build custom rifles optimized for their specific needs. The techniques Hendrix used in 1940 are now standard practice in precision shooting. If this story has inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We uncover remarkable stories of ingenuity and courage that changed history. Stay with us for more incredible content. After the war ended in May 1945, Hendrix returned to Tennessee. He brought his rifle home, where it remains today in his family's possession. The rifle shows wear from hard use but remains in working condition. In 1947, Springfield Armory requested permission to examine Hendrix's rifle. Their report concluded, this privately manufactured rifle demonstrates exceptional attention to detail. Performance characteristics exceed military specification weapons in multiple categories. Recommendation: future military rifle development should incorporate customization principles demonstrated in this weapon. Some of these recommendations were implemented in later sniper rifle programs. The M21 and M24 systems incorporated adjustable stocks, custom triggers, and hand-selected barrels, concepts that Hendrix had employed 20 years earlier. Hendrix rarely spoke publicly about his wartime experiences. He returned to farming in Tennessee and continued building custom rifles for competitive shooters and hunters. His reputation among gun enthusiasts grew steadily. In 1976, a firearms magazine published an article about Hendrix titled, "The Sergeant Who Built His Own War." This brought him national attention among shooting enthusiasts and military historians. The article prompted letters from German veterans who had fought in the Jürgen Forest. One letter from a former German lieutenant described the psychological impact. "We knew there was an American sniper operating in our sector. Every death we couldn't explain, we attributed to him. The terror he created was more damaging than his actual kills. We couldn't sleep. We couldn't move without fear. One man with one rifle had broken our spirits." James Robert Hendrix passed away in November 1999 at age 78. His rifle remains in his family's possession, occasionally displayed at military history events. The broader significance of Hendrix's story extends beyond one man and one rifle. It represents a fundamental conflict in military culture between standardization and optimization. Military organizations favor standardized equipment because it simplifies logistics. But standardization necessarily accepts compromises. Exceptional performance often requires customization. Hendrix proved that in specialized roles, customized equipment could dramatically outperform standard weapons. His 93 confirmed kills in 6 months demonstrated effectiveness that few standard-equipped snipers matched. This lesson has been relearned throughout military history. Modern military snipers build rifles tailored to specific missions. The rigid standardization that initially rejected Hendrix's rifle has given way to recognition that specialized roles require specialized tools. The mockery Hendricks endured reflects a broader human tendency to dismiss innovation that challenges conventional thinking. The drill instructors who laughed at his Tennessee Special couldn't conceive that a civilian-built rifle might outperform military equipment. The officers who wanted to confiscate his farm gun couldn't accept that regulations might be wrong. But Hendricks possessed something bureaucrats lacked: absolute confidence in his own work. He knew, with certainty born from 2 years of building and testing, that his rifle was superior. No amount of mockery could shake that knowledge because it was based on measurable, repeatable performance. This confidence allowed him to endure ridicule, fight bureaucracy, and ultimately prove his rifle's worth in combat. Every German soldier he eliminated validated his judgment. Every night he survived confirmed his rifle's superiority. The story of James Hendricks teaches lessons that transcend military history. It demonstrates that expertise can overcome institutional resistance, that individual innovation can outperform mass production, that ridicule from ignorant critics means nothing compared to proven results. Most profoundly, it shows that excellence requires dedication beyond what most people can comprehend. Hendricks spent 2 years building one rifle when he could have accepted standard equipment. He endured constant mockery when he could have conformed. He fought institutional resistance when he could have surrendered to bureaucracy. He did all this because he understood a fundamental truth. In situations where life depends on performance, excellence isn't optional. His rifle needed to be perfect because imperfection meant death. The 14 German soldiers who died on Hill 257 learned too late what Hendricks knew from the beginning. The farm-built rifle they would have mocked was the last thing they saw. The Tennessee Special that drill instructors ridiculed was the instrument of their defeat. In the end, mockery means nothing. Performance means everything. James Hendricks built a rifle that saved American lives and took German ones with perfect precision. That rifle, assembled from mail-order parts in a Tennessee barn, proved superior to factory weapons produced by the finest military manufacturers. Those who mocked it were wrong. Hendricks was right. And in the final accounting, that's all that matters. They mocked his farm-built rifle, until he dropped 14 German soldiers in one night. And then they understood that excellence recognizes no pedigree, only performance. That innovation serves no master except results, and that sometimes the greatest weapons are built not in factories, but in the hands of craftsmen who refuse to accept anything less than perfection. James Robert Hendricks proved that one man with a perfect rifle is worth more than 100 men with adequate ones. His farm-built weapon demonstrated a truth that bureaucrats still struggle to accept. Sometimes the best equipment isn't issued by supply sergeants, it's built by people who understand their craft better than anyone else. The Tennessee Special was never standard issue, but it was always superior. And in the forest, where men fought and died, superiority was the only standard that mattered.